Sure, just give me a few minutes.
You're live on Facebook.
Okay.
You're up on Facebook.
Just waiting for one more thing. It seems to all be going. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along tonight. So great to have you all here on this amazing full moon night. I don't know if you can see it where you are, but boy, it's amazing here in Sydney where the skies are clear. And if you're around at 9:15, it's going to be a blood moon. So hope you've been outside or get a chance to go outside after tonight. So we're on the Kangaroos Alive webinar series tonight, and we're talking about becoming a kangaroo advocate. And my name is Kate, and I'm co-founder of Kangaroos Alive, and I'll be moderating the event this evening. So firstly, we'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of this country. Look, we've got a great event planned for you tonight, and we've been really excited about this one all year because it's such an informative discussion, and thanks to all our guest speakers for coming on and really jumping in and saying yes to being our speakers tonight. If you can, let us know where you're from on the comments. We really like to welcome you from Europe or Australia or whoever's up and out around the world. Tonight, we're really learning about what people are doing around Australia to advocate for kangaroos in their communities. When I first started working on the Kangaroo movie, I had no idea that the killing of kangaroos was the largest land-based wildlife slaughter in the world. I had no idea that kangaroos were shot every night across Australia in their family groups. The babies are either ripped from the pouches, bludgeoned, stomped on, or just abandoned. It was just so horrific. And I had no idea that there was a few dedicated carers around Australia that had to mop up carnage of this brutal treatment. It was such an eye-opening experience. We knew we had a deeply disturbing story to tell, and there was much to be done to save the kangaroos. I was really deeply moved by meeting the courageous people around Australia who were dedicating their lives to help kangaroos. Some of their stories you'll hear tonight, and like me, I think you'll be inspired by the work and projects they've initiated. Our guest speakers are going to share stories with us, what they've set up in their areas and what they have learned along the way. And we really want to inspire others to step forward, get active, and learn from what they've done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And as many of you here tonight are working tirelessly on the front line, we're really aware of how hard that is and stressful it is. And we've asked Dr. Jenny Broughton to come in and help us discuss our nervous systems and how we can help ourselves navigate and respond to stress, anxiety, and burnout. So please jump on, make comments, ask questions along the way. And if you've actually got experience of great projects that you've initiated in your community, please share them, because I know that lots of people read the comments. And for days to come, as this sits on Facebook and YouTube, lots of people probably about half again come on and watch it in different time zones. So they'll be really interested to see what you're doing. So welcome to all our speakers tonight. And now we're going to welcome Nikki Medwell. She's from the Red Box Shelter. And several years ago, Nikki and her husband, Scott Medwell, moved to a 60-acre bush property in Elphinstone, Victoria. And from that very first day, they were greeted by the resident kangaroo mob. We need to learn about kangaroos, Nikki remarked to her husband Scott that day, and so the journey began. And soon after moving in, they found themselves caring for their very first orphan joey named Mr. Boo. Nikki and Scott are committed to doing everything in their power to protect kangaroos. Their initiative and drive to get things done is admirable. The Mr. Roo Rangers program that you'll probably hear more about tonight is available for everyone to utilise. So we're going to first hear from Nikki, and then later in the evening we'll be hearing from Scott. But first off, thanks so much for coming, Nikki Medwell.
Hi, thanks, Kate. And thank you to everybody who's joining us tonight. I'm anticipating a lot of kangaroo ambassadors surfacing after tonight's webinar, and love to actually hear from everybody. I guess our advocacy work started when it became a shelter, and we were rescuing, raising and rehabilitating and then releasing our kangaroos. And whilst that has a wonderful feeling that goes with it, I realised that I was actually sending them out to just as much danger as they faced on their way coming in to the shelter, and I really needed more eyes on the ground in this region to help me look after the kangaroos that we've loved as our own children and raised and release them. So my main goal was to make sure that everybody in this community kept an eye on the kangaroos. So it wasn't just Scott and I keeping an eye out, it was everybody. So that just sort of started a bit of a snowball effect with, you know, what can we do and how can we reach a wider audience, because most shelter operators will know that it is a socially isolating role. So we're not actually out there really getting a chance to meet face to face. So we needed other avenues. So one of the first things that we created was, after Mr. Boo, was the Mr. Boo program, encouraging children to become Roo Rangers. And when that first started, it was we were mailing out packs. We have a wonderful following, wonderful community on Facebook, and their donations not only go to feeding the kangaroos, but they were also supporting these educational packs. And these packs were being mailed out all around the world, and we were getting letters from Africa and America, different continents, different countries, from children that were had learned about the kangaroos thanks to these packs. And the pack itself really started when we discovered Margaret Warner's educational book, Kangaroo Footprints, and this is available online, and it's only $20. So a good way for you to donate something to your school or buy your teacher for your kids a gift, $20, a really great investment, and that can be used year in and year out. But now we've put the Mr. Boo program online. Margaret's given us permission to use a lot of that material, and we've added a lot of our own. And the online facility actually is now so much easier for people to access. It's worldwide. We have junior, kinder, primary. We even have a mature age program. The children get to download certificates at the end of it. So it's educational, it's interactive, and we have teachers that are using it as part of their curriculum in schools. So we have these little cards that we mail out to people. There we go. And I'm happy to mail out one of these to people if they'd like one, the Mr. Boo program. And but if you get a copy of this, or even if you just have a look at the website online, you know, if you're involved in scouts or school holiday programs with your council, anything that you think that, you know, anywhere you think you can give it exposure, a really great resource, because it's just a really great little program, and if I don't say so myself. So that was our first I suppose leap into attempting to reach the broader audience. Then we decided to come a little bit closer to home, and we have a community bulletin. Now, most people are going to have a community bulletin or a community newspaper, and most of them are always looking for material. So, you know, reach out to your editors and ask ask them to maybe create a column, or maybe if you're prepared to do one yourself. But we have Wildlife Whispers in our local bulletin, and I do a column for that. And whilst we give as much information as we can about the kangaroos, we have a Meet the Elroos. We introduce one of our kangaroos with each column, and that individualises that kangaroo. And we also, you know, will advertise, you know, screenings for Kangaroo the movie, and anything else that we can put into the bulletin, and the editors, you know, very keen. You know, the more information, the better. So that sort of reached, I suppose, a closer knit community, and gave a lot of information, because people just love reading their local, you know, their local rags. Then we decided, I actually asked our postmaster if I could follow him around one day, and he probably decided he really didn't want to appear like he had a stalker. And he asked me why, and I said I would like to put business cards or little cards into everybody's letterbox, which just gives people phone numbers to ring if they find injured, orphaned wildlife. So these type of little cards that you can, just print off, they're very basic with some phone numbers and information on them. You can get 250 of these printed off for $18 if you use someone like Vistaprint. So you can get something like this printed off for your own community, and you can ask, local stores, shop holders, shopkeepers. Everybody knows somebody, in town they're good friends with, or it might be a cafe that you visit regularly, and you say, look, if I had some cards printed off, would you mind popping them on the counter? So our postmaster actually agreed to do that for me. So we had these cards printed off, and he actually dropped one card off in every single letterbox in the Alphingston district. So we knew at that point all community members had contact numbers and details of what to do and who to call, which is, so incredibly important. And so again, that led us to, another development with talking to some of the local people. A lot of them were telling us that they didn't know what to do when they saw an injured animal, or they weren't equipped to pull over and help. I had a lovely lady contact me privately on Facebook saying that she had been driving to work. She was in good clothes and she saw an injured kangaroo on the side of the road, and she didn't pull over and didn't stop and got to work, and was completely distressed and very embarrassed and distraught and upset. And she reached out to me saying, going through my head at that time, I was like, I've got nothing to put it in. I've got no phone numbers. My work clothes are going to get dirty. I can't lift it into the back seat of my car. And all of that happened in a nanosecond, and her panic just kept her driving. And so what we ended up doing was creating these free little community wildlife kits. And you can see they're very thin. And we give these away all the time. We've given away so many of them, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I've actually created a very small video, which has been loaded onto our Facebook page. So if you head to Redbox Wildlife Shelter Facebook page, you'll actually see how we created and put these together. But I've got a couple of minutes, so I'll quickly run through it. We asked the council for a couple of wheelie bins, which they donated to us, and we put one at our general store and we put one at Pet Stock, and we asked people for flannelette sheets and pillowcases. With the flannelette sheets and the pillowcases, we basically they get one each, like 2 pillowcases. We made up a very basic instruction list, some phone numbers to call, and there's actually a ribbon in there as well, and it says wildlife rescuer attending, and some twine. And it tells people, if you can't stop, if you can't stay, please phone a rescuer, phone one of these groups, put this ribbon with this twine near the animal, and phone the rescuer and say, look, I'm on this road, I've hung a ribbon on a tree just above it, it's in long grass, and that gives the rescuer something to look for, when they're searching for these animals. And of course, if they can stop and stay and they can assist, they've got basic instructions. They can, obviously how to take a young joey out of the pouch, or they could put a blue-tongued lizard in the pillowcases. Or just to ring for advice on what to do, and speak to somebody that can just step them through to help that animal. So we've estimated these cost about 25 cents each, and that's really just in the printing and the laminating and this big roll of sort of plastic tape that we use. So very, very cost effective. And, you know, we've had our Shire Council order 40 of them, which they've placed in all their fleet vehicles, and regional Vic Roads have done the same. But these sort of kits, you know, people can, put these together as a community, and it could be a tennis club. It could be, a school project. You could ask if you've got children in primary school or even high school, you can approach the teachers and say, look, can the kids make 40 of these as part of their curriculum? And could we maybe donate them to our Shire Council for their fleet vehicles? Scouts and kindergartens, you could have all sorts of people making up these little kits, and then once they're made up and just start distributing them, start filtering them out, you'd be surprised how empowered people feel by just having that information. And as I said, just talking to people over the years, the resistance of stopping is more about the lack of equipment, knowledge, and phone numbers. So give them that, and they're more likely to stop. And if they do stop and they do rescue an animal and it does come into care, we try and make a point of keeping in contact with people that bring us animals and sending them the occasional photo and let them see that animal is now thriving and growing because of them. And that really personalizes it for people. They think that animal is like their animal. And, one of our kangaroos, Nulla, who was rescued by a young girl just around the corner, he's a couple of years old now, but she swears that Nulla is, visiting her property, each night. And whether he is or isn't, that's because she rescued him as a baby, and now she knows he's part of that mob. So she's very protective, as are her parents, of that mob, because their kangaroo is in there. So that's just some of the stuff that we're doing.
Wow, that's amazing, Nikki. I mean, I love always hearing your stories, and you and Scott are doing so much there. Some of them are so simple. That's what I really like. And I do believe that the grassroots change in smaller communities is making a huge difference around Australia. And people tonight are from I just wanted to thank Nikki so much, and just say on the Wire Red Box Wildlife Shelter, you can find out all the other information from her, and also probably just comment on here, and Nikki will be able to go on and comment now. Thanks so much, Nikki. I'm just going to take over. I just wanted to say welcome to the people tonight from Iceland, New York, Sunshine Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, Bathurst, Italy, Gympie, Germany, just sort of there's so many people, I can't even name them all. So thank you so much for joining us. We just want to thank Nikki so much again. And now our next speaker is a wonderful person who we've met, Charlie Vincent. She's based in Bright in Alpine, Victoria, with her husband and two little girls. And she was the first Animal Justice Party elected councillor in Australia. Charlie's always been passionate about animal welfare. However, it was not until she and her family moved from their city life and found they were surrounded by wildlife that she truly connected with the core issues regarding animal rights, particularly kangaroos. So Charlie's now committed to broadening the circle of compassion in local communities and council decision-making to ensure that we consider not only human and business interests, but the interests of the natural environment and all living beings. So I'm just going to add Charlie, and thanks so much for joining us, Charlie, and I'll hit you on for there.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate, and also just for inviting me to be a part of such an important discussion about sort of activating local communities on these really critical issues, not just what our beautiful kangaroos are facing, but just the general apathy and narrative around kangaroos in Australia. And I first want to acknowledge, I suppose, that for the audience tonight, there's so many people in the audience that are already far more experienced kangaroo advocates than I am, who've been doing this far longer. And so it's an honour to be speaking, but so many of you watching and Nikki and Scott from this who are presenting tonight have all contributed so much to my own journey and learning. So by no means what I have to say is, the be all and end all, but it's really exciting to be able to add some learning over the past 7 months of being on local council here, and hopefully share those learnings with you tonight. So I suppose I just do want to briefly go over why I actually ran for council, and looking at who's here as the names are coming up. I know some of you have probably heard this story a few times, so I will just briefly touch on that. And then the focus is really on what I've learnt so far in the last 7 months being on local council here in Bright, which is in northeast Victoria. We're just an hour away from Falls Creek and Mount Hotham, and surrounded by Alpine National Park and State Forest. And then share a story of change in our community around kangaroos, and ways that I believe our community members can actually work with their council representatives to get better outcomes for kangaroos. And it's very early days here and 7 months in, but I can taste the change. And so hopefully that will inspire all of us to utilise our councils, which we all have one, and happy to take questions. So I suppose just to touch on why did I run for council, as some of you know, my husband and I moved from Adelaide to Alpine, Victoria, so to regional Victoria, and all of a sudden we were surrounded by wildlife and farm animals, and it was just quite a wonderful change, but also a real awakening. And very quickly after moving here, the fires came through the region, and so we were evacuating and packing up, and there was a real penny drop moment for me as we were leaving, and it was just smoke everywhere, and all these animals are just still remaining, and in particular for us, we've got a mob of kangaroos that live alongside us, and just seeing them as we left, and just thinking, wow, our community and our local government is big on representation around ratepayers, but what about the animals? What about the environment? And this sort of thinking started ticking over in my mind, and that fire event did burn over 35% of our region in the Alpine. A huge portion of our region was burned. That was all national park and state forest. So just an unbelievable amount of animals perished, many kangaroos and many wildlife. So that was a real awakening. And so the fact that the elections were coming was a big prompt for me, and I connected with the Animal Justice Party, and it was just such a perfect match with how I felt at a core level with their values, and so was fortunate enough to win a seat on council. And I certainly had my views of what, really passionate, and of what I'm kind of come in and I'm going to do this, and I'm so clear on my views. And I suppose what I want to focus on, I'd say I was revved up would be the phrase. And what I want to focus more on is that I'm trying to take that passion and that revved up emotion, but really temper it in a way that I can be as effective as possible with my advocacy in council, and share some of that learning with you. And I do feel as well that whether that's in council or whether that's in community or in community groups, and wherever you are applying yourself to advocate for kangaroos, I hope that these lessons that I've learned can help. So the first one is, as I said, I was coming in pretty revved up, and some of the other councillors have very, very opposing views to mine on animals and the environment. And so the first realisation was that I needed to find common ground, and really build rapport and build respect with those councillors and with the organisation and with community members. So as opposed to, in my head, this strong, it's me versus you, or us versus them, it's a collective. So it's trying to find that common ground to stand on. And so the second point, lesson for me is, which I'm quite a talker, as some of you know, is to just stop and ask questions and really listen to people. And that has been hard in terms of engaging with opposing views, but really listening to why others feel the way they do. And often there's some ways to unpick that and actually really change people's views for good. And whether you might be talking to a cattle farmer and who's always gotten permits to kill kangaroos because of the way they feel about the competition for grazing, and those conversations that you can have with one person really has the power to change a whole region by just shifting the mindset or educating people on, well, hang on a minute, have you thought about this? Or, ecotourism is so important, and more, our international audience love kangaroos. They're so valuable to our tourism sector, and tourism's really big here. So I suppose just asking questions and trying to have really powerful conversations with community. My next lesson is being patient and strategic. So again, I came in very gung-ho thinking, right, I'm going to do all this, in the first 6 months, and which I would have loved to, but I also have learnt that being patient and getting the right timing on advocacy is really important. So I did read a saying a while back, which was that great advocacy is like a great golf swing. So it's getting a deliberate, skilled action and timing it perfectly. So the timing is important. And I suppose what I mean by that is in council, building those relationships and getting others on side is definitely really important for affecting change in local government and all levels of government. My next lesson was keeping issues really clear and local and specifically solution focused. So I probably have had many conversations in early days, which was a lot of my just outpour of my concern, but not talking to people about what can we do and putting solutions on the table. So that's been a big change in probably the strategy there in those conversations. And I'll explain an example soon. And the final one is just working with everyone. So even those that oppose you. So landholders who are engaged in different practices that aren't really aligned with me personally, or other councillors with completely different views, but ultimately engaging everyone in the conversation and trying to bring everyone along. And that really flows into the biggest learning, which is that it only really takes a ripple to create a wave. And Nikki and Scott actually are at Red Box are a great example of how a couple of people with one shelter and one piece of land have created a massive change in that local community. And so I have got a story to share briefly on that here in the Alpine Shire, which is it's a local story that occurred several months ago here about how one person and one kangaroo have made a huge change in our community. And so some of you may have heard this story, but really sadly and unfortunately, I received a anonymous report several months ago from a community member that a kangaroo had been put down by a council staff member, and that it wasn't done well, and that the kangaroo was injured, but the staff member was really unclear of what to do and didn't know, and took matters into their hands and put that animal down. And so because that one person reached out and made that report, and I had the ability, I was in council, so I had the ability to ask questions and ask for all of the information. We were able I was able to get as much information as possible about what happened, and ask all the questions of our executive around, well, what happened with that animal? What do our vehicles have on board to help injured animals, and what training do our staff have on attending injured wildlife, and when they find or deceased wildlife, and asking questions about what happened with that animal, there was a realisation across the board and a recognition at an executive level that, it's a huge gap. There's a huge gap there, that council staff weren't receiving any training around wildlife response or assistance, and didn't know the first thing to do in many cases, and didn't have any tools, not even the basic kits that Nikki has shared, which anyone can create. And so what was, I suppose, a really, really horrible, sad event led to the ability for me to put to the table that we really wanted. All council staff needed to get wildlife training. All council vehicles needed to have wildlife kits on board, so they could provide basic support. And most importantly, that phone number list of laminated card of what to do and who to call in what order, because generally there was just an absence of that education. And so that was all agreed to, and that's all in the process of being rolled out. And as the story's been shared, then now other councils are starting to take up that. So it is just one story, but it was one person, one kangaroo, and it's made a huge change right at an executive and organisational level, and hopefully across other councils in Victoria. And as usual, I can see you there, Kate, so I'll cut the rest of my chat, but it was so wonderful to be a part of this. And I would like to say that, it can be so hard, but please remain positive, and you're all just such an inspiration. Just how we talk about kangaroos out in the community does change the narrative, and just smiling and being respectful, but telling people the truth about what is happening and giving some solutions, I think is so powerful. So thank you so much for having me, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie. No, so many great things that you're doing there, and I think every little bit counts. Just talking with Charlie and Nikki and Scott on the phone this week, like every little detail and every time someone steps forward, they're really making a difference, because we're trying to change this sort of colonial perspective. It's a paradigm that is very strongly, has a strong hold here in Australia. And, lots of things that we don't do anymore used to have a strong hold, like whaling. We don't do that anymore. We do whale watching. We're really proud whale watching country now. So there is room for change, and I think we just have to keep working towards that. It doesn't happen overnight, and there's a lot of people working, and we're building a bigger, I think the more of us that can be active, the more of us that can talk for kangaroos, the more of us that are standing forward in our community, other people who have had that same feeling can come in behind you. And that's a really fantastic job for you and for Nikki and Scott tonight. So thank you so much, Charlie, and we'll go on to hear more from Scott. You've met Scott's wonderful other half, so it's great for you guys to meet Scott. He does a lot too at the Red Box Wildlife Shelter, and you've heard a little bit about what they're doing. So I'll just leave it up to Scott now to fill you in on what he gets up to.
Yes, thank you very much, Kate. Look, it's a pretty hard act to follow so far. Thanks, Charlie, and obviously Nikki. Look, I'd probably want to just highlight on, I guess, Charlie's comment there about the ripple effect, just on, I suppose, a recent event here in the way of community interaction. Look, we recently had some young people from Melbourne come forwards and decide that they would like to run a festival very nearby to us, which was going to be, I suppose, we describe it as Doof Doof up here, just for all their city mates. I suppose the ripple there, I guess, was that we didn't get notified by council. We had to find out through some neighbours, which was nice that they contacted us and let us know. I then started a letterbox drop and just informing others in the area who also hadn't found out, I guess, about what was going on. And I suppose what I want to get to here is the ripple effect. Just from me talking to a few of the locals and getting around the area, momentum just picks up, as Charlie mentioned. We went from just doing letterbox drops and meeting the locals to, look, I ended up filing a VCAT appeal, which we won, which was great. But that led to media events. The paper got hold of it, local TV, state radio jumped on board as well. look, obviously our point of view was the wildlife in the area. In saying that, I probably know more about the council planning levels than I ever want to know. But that was required to, I guess, argue the point. But the ripple went from there to businesses in the area, I guess. And we did find that the amount of people that won't speak up if they feel they're an individual, but if you can generate something for them to stand behind, you will get unbelievable amount of support. We have found, certainly in this area anyway. I think, from a VCAT point of view, I ended up representing 30 odd other objectors at VCAT who were, like I said, more than happy to have me represent them. Maybe not they would not necessarily have gone themselves, but more than happy to support someone who wanted to stand up front. So look, if you have to put your hand up, do it. You will find that there's a lot of people with support. I mean, just looking at the comments coming through here, there is no shortage of people that will get behind you without any dramas at all. I mean, even with that event, it led to local businesses. We had a local business ended up putting on a function for us. They showed Kangaroo the movie. They packed the place out, sold tickets, and essentially brought forwards the topic of the kangaroo's plight. We had Mick from the Kangaroo film and Greg come down and spoke to the audience as well. It was just a great night. I don't remember seeing anyone there that was against. Everyone had come out in support, and the numbers were huge. It was really, really surprising to see that. More recently, I guess from that, just as a side note, I was looking at purchasing a new vehicle, spoke to the local dealer, who then came to me and said, now I hadn't mentioned who I was apart from my name, and they came straight back to me and said, yep, look, we'll help you out with a car, but by the way, we know who you guys are out there at Redbox, and we would love to support you. Can we make a donation? What can we do to help? And it's just a matter of, like I said, causing that ripple. I mean, Charlie's all over it. It's that little ripple effect. People will jump on board if they think someone is going to lead. And that's what we need to do, whether it's by education or just being in different areas. I get out and about with wild shelter top on, a lot of different sporting events, local pubs. Now, look, you're not going to get comments that are favourable all the time. But if you can keep the emotion out of the conversations and you can argue with valid points, there is no bad discussion that I have found so far. It is just a matter of getting out there and having a conversation, educating people, as has been noted earlier. If we can get that far, we'll go a lot further. I mean, I know there's a lot of comments there talking about culls, slaughters that are going on. But you see the power of Facebook and what's going on now. Some people are starting to lead, and the amount of people that will follow and jump on board is awesome. If we can get more of this forwards to people and people actually see what's going on. I mean, the advantage these guys have got at the moment is they do it all by night. And no one will go out there from, I suppose, we've found here in Victoria, from a corrections point of view, to oversee the shooters, because they deem it too dangerous. How do you work against that? So the more we can get out there, like showing the films, showing these kind of things to the general public, the better we're going to be. People will jump on board, and once we get the people on board, this will stop. I suppose just one other point, just to harp on from where Nikki started from. One other thing we do here, and it's just a matter, as Nick said, putting out a call for, I guess, some sponsorship or some donations. One thing we do here, where are we? Is you can see that there. That's a sign that our donors will pay for, and we get packs of those. But we then go out and put in the local paper that we're happy to either come out and put them up for people, and they're free for the people that want to take part. It is just another step forwards of the push where if you will lead from the front, people are more than happy to have free stuff all the time. Even if you go out and put it up, is even better. But they're more than happy to support you if you can lead it. And I see the wind up there from Kate.
I was just going to jump on and have a chat.
Oh, sorry.
Scott, one of the things that I really like about, I was talking to Nikki and you the other day, was about how it wasn't so much that you were reluctant to become the leaders in your community, but by chance you become the leaders. And I know that a lot of people have come in behind you. Someone rang up the other day, I think, about rescuing a kangaroo on their property, and they were so pleased to have your number. I just think all those ways that you've stood forward has created more people in your community, and the woman who ran the hostess screening event the other night contacted you. So it's interesting when you're willing to stand up that other people, you know, who aren't so willing or so alarmed by the situation can just come in a bit behind you. And I think that's a really wonderful thing that you guys have done.
Yes, look, thank you very much, Kate. But look, that's sort of pretty much where I've got to. And as you said there, and Charlie nailed it too, it's that ripple. If you are happy to stand at the front, you will be amazed at the amount of support you will get behind you. Look, it's not always, you know, what you might be very comfortable with. You know, I certainly wasn't super comfortable about representing 30 other people and going and taking legal action. But at the end of the day, someone had to do it. And we were doing it for animals. Other people were doing it because they didn't want noise beside their property. But at the end of the day, they'll support someone who wants to stand up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Scott. That's amazing. Well done for all the great work you do. Thank you for on behalf of the Kangaroos. So, you know, so many questions have been coming in and we've been reading them, and some it's difficult for us to answer them all tonight because we're not on some of those topics. But yes, we know that the shooting tonight in Canberra, there's so many things to work at. From many of you joined our last webinar, we spoke about Canberra and talked to the people on the ground there. Land clearing is a huge problem. One of the things that Nikki and Scott have done recently is hold a screening of the movie Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story, and that's a fantastic thing to do, just to sort of let people come in. In Beaufort last 2 weeks ago, there was a farmer and a shooter and different people came in to the screening. It's great to have them there watching the film. They don't agree with everything, but at least it's a chance to meet them and talk. And someone else, I think, is in Queensland just saying that she caught up with a kangaroo shooter the other day. Of course, we really have to do this together. This is something that Australians have to work at together. Thanks from our friends in Italy tonight who are saying the world is watching, and we really need you to watch. We really want your help. We love having you on board, and when our borders open again, we want you to come down and see the kangaroos, and we hope that kangaroo tourism becomes a really major thing, and hopefully in Charlie's area, you know, that will happen. So I just now want to introduce to you and ask Dr. Jenny Broughton to come on. She is interested, she works in a hospital setting, just say goodbye to Scott there. She works in a hospital setting and is interested in how our nervous systems respond in real time to stresses and how to navigate this increasingly difficult world so that our relative pockets of safety and ease are known and grow. Jen works to explain the nervous system and how we respond to stress and how to help us create brief practices that help stabilize the system. She is trained in mindfulness and is currently training in somatic experiencing. So thanks so much, Jen, for joining us tonight. We know that a lot of people who work in this space, it's a hard space. They're right on the front line in a sort of many places in quite a sort of negative part of the country, and they get burnt out, they're stressed, they've got PTSD, and we really wanted to support them tonight with your great information. So I'll leave you to it, and there might be some questions at the end. Jen, we can't
Yeah.
hear you. Your mics. You have to start again from the beginning because I'm sorry that
Okay.
your mic working. Thanks so much.
That was just all visual. Yeah, I was just want to acknowledge all your work on the front line and those behind the scenes, and we all do this together, as has been mentioned. And yeah, I'm just going to offer a small ripple to you of practice and about our nervous system. And I just want to say, I'm going to be talking about stress and the nervous system and giving you 3 brief practices that you may or may not want to do, no problem. And I just want to say that we're really designed for stress. You know, on this planet, you may have noticed there is stress and there's trauma. We're designed for this. We're designed to be here. So, you know, so often we can see stress as wrong, and it's not. But sometimes we carry a bit more than we need to. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, and work with, and maybe point to ways of noticing that. So I also want to acknowledge that I've learned a lot from watching my animal friends, and that they and people in the hospital, that when they can really show us a lot about how to be with stress and what helps. So maybe just even, you know, maybe just paying, and I'm sure lots of you know what they do, paying attention to them, you'll learn a lot. And one of the things they do, and maybe we can do it right now, is they shake. So they're shaking their systems out all the time. There's this shaking. So, you know, you might just want to shake your hands. We've been talking a lot. Give the shoulders a bit of a shake. You know, move around. They do this. Dogs, you know, every few minutes to 10 minutes or so, they give themselves a really good shake. So don't be afraid to just simply shake when you're feeling, you know, give yourself a bit of a shake out when you're feeling stressed. And anything else you see them do. So, the stress response. We have this stress response, and it's a great response. It's designed so we can fight, we can flee, and we can freeze. And all these are very adaptive. So in a moment of stress, we might choose one of those 3 to do, and hopefully it'll be the right one. The problem we get into as humans, because we have these really clever minds, or I don't know that they are, but we have this extra bit here, is that we get into the echo of the stress. And so there's this stressful event, but then we tend to relive it. And that may be an image or in a story. You know, it's not that we're planning to, but it comes up. And particularly with very big stressors. And we've heard a lot about, you know, there's been a lot of imagery tonight, which I can just really feel in my nervous system. And it has impact. Because when that comes up, we actually have the, you know, some of the echo of in our nervous system of that experience. So one practice to work with that is simply to notice when we do something, you know, we kind of relive or plan something. We might do it, you know, once, twice, but when we're getting up to 5 times, we're probably, you know, starting to get more into a chronicity around that. So a simple practice to do is just actually to notice there's a stress response. And what happens in the very first part of that stress response is there's a natural bracing. The very first bit of the stress response is to brace. And then to fight, to flee, or to hunker down and freeze. So it's that bracing. Because we live in a sedentary world, we're actually designed for a physical world. You know, we're mammals, we're designed for this physical movement, to be in the environment doing stuff. We're often hunkered down, we're often still, we're often behind computers or at desks. And so, you know, an image might come up or a story, and there's that stress response. And there's this subtle bracing or not so subtle. You know, I find my shoulders are often up here, but it's in the big muscles, the shoulders, the back, the abdomen braces, so the breath shortens. The legs, the deep muscles in the pelvis, get ready to lift those legs to move. So to notice that, anytime you just notice that the shoulders are raised, or there's that short, you know, often we sit with a tightened tummy, just to simply move, because that's what we would normally do, and stretch it out, because that movement is forward and a hunching sort of. So to extend. And just bring any old movement that works for you, and maybe bring a few breaths in. You can do it now. because we often will have had a shorter breath. So bringing in a longer breath and then lengthening the exhale. And you can even bring in a sigh if it's there, you know, just kind of hanging out with the breath and lengthening it. And the other thing that you can do is just to, you know, you might want to just bring some warmth to your cheek if you're on a desk, just and really feel into the warmth, or, you know, if there is stress there, bringing a hand to the forehead. Just this simple feeling of warmth can actually sends a message to the body of there's warmth and stability here. So stressor, noticing the echo of the stressor, and then noticing maybe in the body that there might be a bit of tightening of the breath, the bracing, just moving. That's what we're designed to do, stretching it out in whatever way works. So, and then we have this, so there's this wave-like motion in the nervous system. We have the stress response, and then we have this response of the, it's called the vagal nerve. It's the mammalian nerve of attachment. And it is, an easy way to remember it is the 10 befriend and rest and digest system. So whenever we're in that tending, befriending, rest, digest, we're kind of not in the fight, flight, freeze. And the trick is to notice when you're in it and really linger and savor it, because we are wired for survival, we are wired to notice what's difficult. We are Velcro for that. We are Velcro for stress response, and we grip it. And we grip it more than we need. So learning about our mammalian nerve of attachment, and we've been hearing about it, people talking about the support of when you come forward and the support behind, that felt sense of support behind as people gather. That is our 10 befriend. That's our mammalian nervous system in action. When we look after that frightened creature, what we're bringing forward there, we're not in our fight flight, because the creature is, or our friend is, or we are. You know, when there's a system like that, if we're beside them and we're calm, you'll notice the voice will often change. It'll often be quieter and slower. The movements will be slow. And as we really inhabit that part of our nervous system of 10 befriend, rest and digest, that other person and that other creature feels it. They know that you're not in the fight, flight, freeze, and their nervous system settles. It's not a talking intellectual thing. It's in the tone of the voice. It's in the speed. It's in the touch that is kind. We transmit that. And I see it in the hospital, you know, just the warmth of a hand when someone's really distressed, and a tone in the voice and the connection. It activates and it calms. So we can do that for ourselves. And a practice here is called relative pockets of safety. So you might want to think about Joey going into a pocket, really safe. We're Teflon for these experiences in the same way we're Velcro for the things that bring us threat. We're creatures of survival. We're also creatures of nurturing. You know, the old bonobos, the closest relative to the chimpanzee, they just love to play games, have babies, become grandparents and make jokes. They're all into it. So we're Teflon for these positive experiences, these experiences of relative safety, you know, because we don't need to worry about them really, you know, and there's a lot to worry about. So coming into noticing these, and we've noticed, I imagine all of us have had experiences tonight of just seeing what people are doing, and the beautiful little kits that you know, that are so beautifully made there, and you know, I could feel the warmth of those just little blankies that are there, and the kindness and care that comes with that. You know, it makes me feel like, oh, and that's that nerve. So neurons that wire together fire together. So if we can give it, rather than pass over it, give it a little bit of grip, and we give it a little bit of grip by lingering. Just, you know, maybe bringing even to mind now, or there might be a picture around of something that you care for, or a creature with a warm fur, a Joey coming into that pocket, a child who you love. Maybe there's someone in the past who's no longer even here who, you know, you really know has their back. your back. Maybe it's a place in nature or just warmth of the sun. And again, even the warmth of hand can feel like a relative pocket of safety or just a stabilising touch towards yourself when you're feeling distressed. And lingering with it for about 15 seconds or 2 to 3 breaths or half a second even. I like a half-second practice. I'm quite good at those. So this is a consciously bringing to mind, or whenever you notice it in your life, maybe it's that sip of coffee or wine, or that moment when you sit down for Netflix. Don't miss it. Hang out in it. As you hang out in it, those neuronal pathways grow and it'll become more available until you can just bring that thing to mind and you get the feeling. Now that's cheap. You have this, for me, I can just bring the feeling of the cup of coffee to mind and that first sip, and I just get this nice feeling. So that, again, is this wave-like nature, that we can have a stress and we can bring in this relative pocket of safety towards ourselves and or towards another. And you're doing it towards others all the time, so we can learn to do it towards ourselves. It's just something we're not familiar with. So, might just have a bit of a wriggle. The other thing I wanted to talk about was freeze, and it's not often talked about. We hear about fight, flight all the time, but freeze is coming more into the dialogue. It's in this old part of our brain, and it is, the wiring up is not so strong. And the experience of freeze is a feeling of alone, feeling of overwhelm, feeling of isolated. It's kind of got a stillness and a coolness to it, that we're not in connection. The antidotes to it are literally to move. And it might be, because we're often still in that state and don't want to move, it might be just to wriggle the fingers and toes. Or it might be to imagine movement, or imagining the movement of another, like imagining the kangaroos moving beautifully across a landscape. Or that joey climbing in. Oh, I love that one. And to movement, to bring in connection, so bringing on that nerve of tender, befriend, rest, digest, but bringing it into real time, an animal beside you or someone who is trustworthy, who supports you, reaching out. And to know that it takes time. Fight, flight are fast, freeze is slow. If you're in it, it takes time to come out of it. Movement starts to bring us out. Little movement can become bigger movement. So there's a few practices for you. It's all wave-like, and the ripple that people have been talking about, our nervous systems do this. It's good to bring more in consciously. So if we've got an echo of stress, bringing in that movement of wanting to move and slowing the breath, taking at least 3 conscious breaths, that concentration helps us to anchor in. Relative pockets of safety, brings on the nerve of tend, befriend. And if that freeze is arising, just noticing it and looking after yourself like you would that kangaroo who's in freeze, or a friend. Bringing in warm connection, just the warmth of a hand on the face, or literal warmth, and movement, and knowing it takes time. So kindness towards yourselves. So look after yourselves.
Thank you so much, Jen. Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, I love tend, befriend, rest, and digest.
Yeah, anytime you're doing that, you're in the vagal nerve, and noticing it, you build that wiring for it, becomes more available.
And that's also great for like burnout, isn't it? And like
totally,
energy.
Lots of it in burnout.
Yeah. I know that lots of people, like if you've heard guns in the night, or your stresses have been rattled, or you've seen a lot of carnage. Yeah,
there's major. This is trauma. This is trauma, and working with the echoes of that as well. Just finding out what it is that stabilizes you, what makes you feel grounded and connected. Hands on the face. Bring it in.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for taking time out of your medical hospital life and coming to everyone tonight. I know that there's lots of people thanking you on the tips, on the comments, and I hope a lot of people can find this useful and you took some notes. And I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on board, and I'll just wind up tonight with a few last comments. So thanks, Jen. I'll take over the screen. So guys, you can watch this again. The whole thing will remain on Kangaroos Alive Facebook page and Kangaroos Alive YouTube channel. I'm just going to share some other information with you before you leave. So if anyone else hasn't been hasn't been there tonight and wants to join us, please let them know that they're really welcome to come and watch it afterwards. So what would be really great tonight, if you're inspired and you're wanting to help us, is to support the work that we've been doing. First off, of course, to the beautiful work that they're doing at the Red Box Wildlife Shelter. It would be fantastic to support them. And, I know that Nikki and Scott are incredibly happy to support you and would really like to reach out if you want to get in touch with them about any of the programs they're doing tonight. Thanks so much to them for letting them know. And we would really love any support you can give us. If you go to kangaroosalive.org, there's a donate button. We really want to carry on these webinars. We've been enjoying them, and we feel like they're a really great way to bring the community together, from across the world. So please, if you've enjoyed tonight, please come on, donate, and support our next webinars. The next webinar we'll be having is in July, Wednesday, the 28th of July. So join us then. Of course, we'll tell you about it all over social media before that's happened. But thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the beautiful full moon wherever you are, and if you're in Europe or America, hopefully you've seen it last night or you can get to see it tonight. We really appreciate you coming on. Please chat amongst yourselves on the comments, and I know there's culling going on and everyone's super concerned about the kangaroos, and let's use that to activate ourselves in our communities. Wherever you are, jump on. Be a voice for kangaroos. So thanks, Nikki, Scott, Charlie, and Jen, and we'll see you all at the next webinar. Cheers. Bye.